Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. As you can see, we're in a brand new space and we've got a Christmas decoration because we're only a week away, or more or less a week away from Christmas. We've got a big show for you today. We're going to be speaking to William Clouston, who is, of course, the leader of the Social Democrat Party. We've got lots to talk to him about with Labour, but of course we'll also be touching upon that terrible event over the weekend, the Bondi Beach massacre, where 11 people were shot dead by 2, possibly 3 terrorists. One of whom is now dead as well, and where people are asking the question, how many more of these atrocities, anti-Jewish atrocities, on the day that Hanukkah began are going to go on. We'll also be talking to Jenkins. He's got the latest updates for us on Richard III. Of course, Rachel Reeves, who is still lying about the state of the economy. And of course, we'll also be talking about the latest on the doctors' strike and whether or not it's going to go ahead. And of course, the latest on the super flu, or the Flunami as they're now calling it. Because guess what they're talking about? They're asking people to wear masks, maybe in school, all over again. Absolutely incredible. This is, of course, the home of common sense. It's the real home of common sense. Let's get it on. And just before we talk to our first guest, William Clouston, I want you to look at this piece of video because this is quite extraordinary. This is from Bondi Beach yesterday. It happened right in the middle of gunshots being fired, people being sprayed with bullets all over the place, lots and lots of people injured, dozens of people injured, 2 assailants with high-powered rifles just shooting people at random who were buying ice creams on the beach. Absolutely extraordinary. But look at this hero, a local hero who crept up on one of the shooters and took the gun off him. Check it out.
This footage shows the moment a man tackled one of the gunmen and managed to take his weapon after a brief struggle.
Oui, j'ai vu. Ouais.
It's a terrible thing, isn't it, when you think about what happened over the weekend on Sunday. Bondi Beach, it was a perfect day in Sydney. People had gone out to start their Hanukkah celebrations, specifically the Jewish population of Sydney, the Jewish community, which is very well known in Bondi Beach. I mean, everybody's heard of Bondi Beach. It's literally like, as somebody described it, the Eiffel Tower, the Houses of Parliament, and the sort of the Berlin Brandenburg Gate all wrapped into one. I mean, it's such a famous place. It's like Copacabana. People go there. It was beautiful. Crowds were swarming all over the beach. Hundreds of people were there by early afternoon. They were lingering there into the early evening. About 1,000 members of Sydney's large Jewish community were assembling for Hanukkah by the sea. So it was an event which had been announced. And so obviously the scumbags who decided to shoot ordinary innocent people and kill them, including one rabbi from this country, from London, an Israeli citizen who was there obviously visiting as well. And they just unleashed this horror on people, shot. So many people were covered in blood. So many people were seen just lying dead and motionless on the sand, the white sand of Bondi Beach. And you just think, how much more of this are we supposed to put up with? How much more of this can we take in the West? And when is any government going to do something about it? Because it ain't stopping anytime soon. We'll talk some more about that, I'm sure, throughout the course of the week as we find out more about who these people were that actually did the murders and killed 11 people who didn't need to die at all on a Sunday afternoon. This, as you can see, is our brand new studio. And we're preparing for Christmas as well. We've got a little Christmas ornament here, which we paid a great deal of money for a little bit earlier on today. So we'll bring you our first guest in our new studio, in our new home, which is going to be fantastic. And it's William Clouston, who is, of course, the leader of the SDP, the Social Democrat Party. William, very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning, Mike. Good to be back.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Obviously, we were going to start the conversation today with what's going on inside the government, with what's going on in our political system and how the rise of reform is affecting every single political party, it would seem. But obviously, you know, news events have kind of taken over because obviously yesterday morning, we all kind of woke up to this ghastly, horrible scene in Bondi Beach in Australia where 2 or possibly 3 armed gunmen decided to start randomly shooting Jewish people who were just enjoying themselves at the start of the celebrations for Hanukkah. And it's just yet another example of how the West has been kind of completely and utterly invaded by these ghastly, horrible terrorists, anti-Semites, who just think nothing of killing Jewish people just because they're Jewish.
Yeah, it's very sad. As you know, I've got a lot of family in Australia, and in fact, yesterday morning we were chatting together, and it was happening literally as we were chatting. And it's obviously it's an appalling tragedy. You think of the victims, and your hearts go out to all the families that are affected by this. Many people dead, and many people hospitalised, including children. So it's a disgusting attack, and it's just appalling. But of course, Australia, and for this to happen at Bondi, this is an iconic place where people come together to enjoy themselves. And there's, as you say, there actually isn't pretty much. There's no part of the West that is free of this. And Australia used to be called the lucky country, and it's difficult to find a pocket of anywhere. You've had terrorist attacks in New Zealand. I think this is something in Australia's case. I mean, this is easily the worst thing that's ever happened in this respect. But Mike, there have been about 10 previous terror attacks, including stabbings and shootings, actually, in Sydney and Melbourne. So unfortunately, it's very depressing. This is the world they've made for us.
And of course, a lot of people have been drawing the conclusion that many have drawn in this country as well, that because certain governments, including our own, decided to recognise Palestine as a state, because we've spent so many weekends now watching pro-Palestinian demonstrators chanting death to the IDF and chanting, let's have a global intifada. And many people yesterday, when this was happening live, as it were, were saying, well, this is the result. This is what you get if you get nation states recognising effectively a terrorist organisation like Hamas running a government. This is kind of what you encourage in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, when people shout globalise the intifada, and they've been saying it in Birmingham and in Manchester and London every weekend for a long time, and the police are standing there watching it, this is actually what it means. This is what they're talking about, and this is what they're urging people to do. And you're encouraged not to be angry. I'm angry about this. I think it's a disgraceful state of affairs, and I think it's caused. Whether you can link it to the Canadians or the Albanese government and the Australia recognising Palestine, which is cretinous anyway. What are they recognising? Tell me. The first thing when that happened, Mike, I said, well, what borders are you on about? What are you actually talking about? And they can't point to it because it's just rhetoric. So I don't think that helps. But I think, honestly, let's cut to the chase. Your viewers are intelligent people. We know why this is happening. What's happened is we've imported anti-Semitism on a vast scale into the West. And at a population level, the state has to look at these people, and they have to monitor a lot of them, and a lot of them are on watch lists constantly. And as I say, must be it's easily the biggest, but there's been 10 previous terrorist attacks in Australia, and Australia's a long way from the Middle East, but it'll come to you if you let these populations in with these viewpoints.
Yeah, exactly right. And then one of the assailants was killed. He's been confirmed as Mr. Naveed Akram, 24, from Bonnie Rig, which is a suburb of Sydney, as you'll know. His home raided by the police. The family have owned a property for a year. He was apparently shot, arrested, and remains in custody. I think the other gunman was shot dead at the scene. We don't know who he was. We don't know how long they've been living there, or how long they've been in Australia. But there's talk of possibly a third man, explosive devices found in a vehicle. The question, I suppose, has to be asked, how do we stop this, and when does it end? Or is it just something we have to live with for the rest of time?
Well, maybe all the Western states should be more careful about who we let in the first place. And I mean, in the SDP, we've been calling for what we think is a sane policy of ending mass immigration, and just find out what you've got and try and at least remove people who are here illegally. But to get back to our own state, the Howard government, John Howard won an election campaign saying we will decide who comes to Australia and under what circumstances, and the public agreed with him. They don't have any illegal migration there, so the Australians have to look at who they've let in legally, because basically you have to fly there. So there's too much migration anyway, which is overheating the property market in Melbourne and Sydney and Canberra even. It makes it very difficult for people. You can't have the good life. But to get back to our own state, look, we've had a month of bad weather, and the chaos in the Channel stopped for a while, and then suddenly 600 people arrive. You don't know. government don't know. Our government don't know anything about these people
No.
who've arrived. Many of them might be dangerous or in these categories. And I'm starting to say, Mike, I don't want to sound, I'm, as you know, I'm a pretty measured politician, but I think the ruling elite is psychotic. You know, this is crazy behaviour to just let people wander into your country, and you've got to wake up and realise it can't go on.
Well, exactly. I mean, Isabel Oakeshott did a remarkable documentary. I don't know if you saw it over the weekend on YouTube, but, you know, where she paints a picture of these camps in Calais, which are basically run as criminal enterprises. You know, there's nothing humanitarian about them. There's nothing, you know, that's got anything to do with human rights and people's dignity. You know, there are criminals operating criminal enterprises involving drugs, involving guns, involving people trafficking, you know. And so with the best will in the world, all the people who are coming over on these boats are literally part of a criminal enterprise. It's as simple as that. So if we're lucky, all they are is you know, people who will steal clothes or will, you know, operate brothels. But, you know, in the worst case scenario, some of them are dangerous, violent people.
Well, they're all criminals because they've breached the Immigration Act for a start, which still applies. So that's true. But yeah, but the ruling elite is pathological. They still think it's hello clouds, hello sky, everything's fine, and they don't realise. I mean, just on their own figures, on the OBR's figures, with low skill migration, it's fiscally negative. It's costing you millions, and it's not. I've said before, one of these illegal migrants will cost over a lifetime something like £500,000. You know, so 600 on the other day is another 300 million lost to the country, which can't balance its books. And I'm just waiting for a government that wakes up to it and says that we can't have this anymore. There's nobody talking. The Home Secretary's talking about it, but she's not doing anything. It won't make any difference.
No. Well, funnily enough, I was looking back, and we'll be doing this later on in the week, at some of the things that happened over the course of this past sort of year, the 12 months to Christmas coming up next week. And almost every month, there's yet another announcement by the government about what they're going to do regarding, you know, asylum seekers and whether they're going to take them out of the hotels by 2029. But almost everything is an announcement about something that's going to happen in the future, which simply hasn't happened. And, you know, people in Australia this morning were talking about how this all began for them on the 9th of October 2023 at Sydney Opera House, where there was a march across Sydney Harbour Bridge, terrorist flags being waved, extremist leaders being glorified, and, you know, the chanting of the global intifada began literally 2 days after the October the 7th massacre in Israel. And this is the result.
I saw that, and it was outrageous. And you know, a lot of people contested what was said, and, you know, some of the specifics, maybe some of it was true, maybe it wasn't, but it was certainly aggressive. And to do that shortly after that attack was disgraceful, and very little is done about it.
Yeah.
As I say, we're just governed by extremely weak people that'll make all of this worse. And a lot of the, you know, I mean, even some of the Australian politicians are saying, I thought Alexander Downer spoke yesterday about it very well, actually. He's a very sensible chap. But some of the others are saying, you know, well, it's got to be assimilation or nothing. All the evidence, the academic evidence, says that people don't assimilate. I mean, they do at the edges, but a lot of the groups you're inviting in have no intention of letting their daughters marry your sons. So you're pretending that this isn't happening when it's actually happening. So nothing will change until you elect people that actually represent the broad view of the public. And the public is fed up with this, and it's got to change.
Yeah, exactly right. Because even as we speak, you know, there are still pro-Palestinian marches going on. I mean, just 2 days ago, I think it was down in Brighton, there was a demonstration from the Palestine Action Organisation. There was an Israeli restaurant that was picketed by a load of people who were, you know, chanting outside the restaurant and hurling abuse at the people sitting inside the restaurant simply because it was an Israeli-owned restaurant. And the police are just standing by and watching it happening here.
But they have a record of doing this. It's the same as the people that came down from the north to abuse people in North London. Nothing was done about it. Very little was done about it. But it's everywhere, literally, virtually across the West and across Europe. You know, yesterday was a report in Germany of a terror attack being foiled on a Christmas market. And we've seen this again and again and again. In my own nearest city in Newcastle, I was in town the other day, and there's a Christmas market, and it's very nice. But of course, you know what's next to the Christmas market, Mike? Great big concrete barriers.
Yeah.
To protect this market in the centre, near Gray's Monument, from being attacked by Islamist terrorists. So that's unfortunately where we are.
It is, unfortunately. Let's talk a bit about the state of play in Downing Street as well, because it's been a pretty miserable year for Keir Starmer. And this weekend, again, more talk of him not lasting the pace, certainly not lasting beyond the May elections of next year, when he's likely to be absolutely routed by Reform, amongst others, and maybe even by your good selves in some way, shape or form in the council elections. But Andy Burnham has sort of raised his hackles again this weekend. Talk of him looking for a seat as an MP that he can take over in May, which will then pile more pressure on Keir Starmer. Do you see that happening?
Well, he might try to. It's obvious that it's fragmenting now, and Starmer is a lame duck. Badenoch's correct about that. He's a lame duck prime minister now. It's finished. The whole whiff of the government it's the type of characterization you'd have of a party that's been in 10 years and is literally dying a death at the last part. Not a government that's been in for a year and a half. But Burnham wants it. He's not my top tip for the job, whether you like it or not. And I know you won't like this, Mike, but Ed Miliband will probably be the next prime minister, and I'll explain why in a second. But first,
no, you're quite right about that. I don't like that at all.
No, it's shocking, but I'll explain my logic. But Burnham, I mean, the first thing he's got to do is get a seat, and actually the critical hurdle is actually, even if someone stepped aside, I'm not sure he can win any seat at the moment in any by-election. Honestly. Yeah. Even in an absolutely rock solid, if the public was offered the chance of Burnham being shipped in, I think they'd reject it. They'd knock it down. I think there's very few places, I think, in the country which would accept that. But even if he did, he's not popular, in the PLP, and he's not particularly popular among the members. But unfortunately, there is someone that's popular in the PLP and very popular on Labour list at the top, unfortunately, Ed Miliband. And I've said to people, Ed Miliband probably will be the next prime minister. And someone said to me in the pub, Mike, they said, well, yeah, but he's mad. And I said, well, yeah, but do you think the Labour Party membership's completely sane?
Right. But he is. I mean, the trouble is, he's already been leader once, hasn't he? And it didn't work out for him then. At the end of the day, and so and the one thing that would worry me and will worry an awful lot of people is that his net zero kind of zealous crusade is insane. He literally, whenever you see him being interviewed and trying to explain to people why the gas prices are still high, he doesn't sort of get it, does he? He still can't really. There's that famous clip from Sky in which he just doesn't. He doesn't sort of understand that the gas prices are fixed. And they could actually be lower if he decided to lower them.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the policy costs that he and his fellow travellers have applied. I mean, that's what makes the bills expensive as well, even if you take gas prices out of it. But no, it's right. I mean, be quite right. I totally accept that. But the electorate, people forget this. Please, viewers, get this. Who is going to decide? It's the electorate. It's the combination of the PLP who will decide who's on the list. The Labour members and the unions will decide it. Unfortunately, in that constituency, he's actually quite popular, and all this stuff is quite popular. I think it's crazy. It's beggaring the country, and it's deindustrialising, and it's a disaster. But the people that will elect him believe in it. So I think he's probably a favourite, actually. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. And in terms of just the general kind of scene, it's been a reasonably good year, I guess, for anyone who's not one of the two main parties, because the Tories might be having a bit of a revival. Kemi Badenoch's now coming slightly more back to where she was, as a reasonably decent MP and a reasonably good kind of foe for Keir Starmer Prime Minister's questions. But I mean, it's been Reform's year, really, hasn't it? I mean, they've now got the biggest political party in the country, 270,000 members. It's quite an achievement, isn't it?
No, it's a massive achievement, yeah. I mean, but remember, Mike, it isn't over a year or two. It's basically wrapped up into Nigel Farage's political career over a quarter of a century. So it hasn't been an overnight success. I think people sometimes forget that. But yes, they're in a great position, and the country, I think, will use them as a cudgel to want to lash out at the ruling parties, all of which are pretty useless. And so it is. And and we're looking forward to the council elections, particularly in the northern cities, in Leeds and Manchester. There's some great challenges for us, and some of these old Labour seats in places like Leeds which used to get 65, 70% Labour vote now, have turned into four-way marginals, 3 and 4-way marginals. The people that worry me most, actually, are the Greens, who
Yeah.
I think they have a leadership which is dishonest and at times virtually cretinous, actually really dangerously stupid. And yet 15% of people in this country seem to want to vote for these people. But that tells the story. I think there's a major problem. We need to scrutinise them very carefully. Quite extreme people.
I think so. Well, I mean, only just a couple of days before that horrible shooting in Australia, Zach Polanski was over in Calais, sort of helping to hand out things and coats and food and stuff to channel migrants who wanted to come here, illegal migrants, saying we should get them all over here and they should all be working in the NHS or working in the care sector, without even knowing who they are, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, I mean, it's off the scale stupidity. I mean, this sort of thing is just, two things worry me about that. If he believes it, he really is, he's not fit to manage anything. And if he doesn't believe it, he's just being dishonest. I mean, this can't be good for the country. What we want in the SDP is we want a migration system that puts the national interest first, and in particular puts the people of this country first. And virtually everything the Green Party say is against the interests of the people. It's just, I'm astonished that they've got up to where they are, but there you go.
But we have got this kind of cohort of people, and I don't think they will grow. I think they'll stay exactly where they are. But they've got a cohort of people now. Many of them are young, sort of idealistic types who think that, rich people are bad, poor people are good. The way to solve the world's problems is to take all the money the rich people have got and give it to the poor people. It's just not that simple, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, really, the future depends on investment. It's not taking things off people in that sense. And what they'll find is, and all of history tells you this, I mean, the contribution in income tax of the top 1% is colossal, and the top 10% is the majority. I mean, so, you're squeezing quite a lot of money out of that cohort anyway. And as I keep on saying about the Chancellor's political strategy is to say that things are worse than they are, and then to say that we've got a black hole and we've got to raise taxes and beat money out of people's pockets. But what she's doing, there gets to be a point where you just can't beat any more money out of corporate and household budget. You just can't. You get to the point where you'll kill the goose. And none of this occurs to these people. So it's a very old type of politics, as you know, Mike. It's just not very numerate. I mean, apart from anything else, a lot of young people are just leaving. And I think if a party like the Greens, you think it's bad enough as we have with Reeves, if a party like the Greens ever got in, or heaven forfend, just an awful rainbow coalition. Imagine, I think the biggest risk we have as a country, probably, at the 2029 general election, is that you end up with this awful coalition, and it could be between, imagine this, Mike, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the Greens, Lib Dems, Labour and your party. Oh my word! Just imagine what it would be like.
I think I'd be on the first plane out. I think probably with you. I might come to Shetland or somewhere. Set up a private community.
Yes, just hole up
of sensible people.
Just go to Wire.
Absolutely right. God, what a terrible thought that is. William, great to see you. Have a great Christmas. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll talk to you, I'm sure, in the new year. Thank you very much indeed. William Clouston there, the leader of the Social Democrat Party. Absolutely extraordinary prediction that he's making there, that what would happen in 2029 if we got that ridiculous coalition of all the nutters together. SNP, Plaid Cymru, your party, and then the Greens as well with old Zach Polanski, the man that we say cleans his teeth with a hammer. Incredible. See you in a minute. Right now, though, it's time to talk to our next guest, and it is, of course, our favourite statistician, Mr. Jamie Jenkins, down in Welsh, Wales. Jamie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How's it going?
Yeah, very well. Good to see you. Let's talk not about what happened over the weekend, which is horrific, and we've covered it to some extent on the show. Let's talk about what happens this week in this country, because some figures came out back end of last week about the economy, which showed that October was an even worse month than anybody thought. And poor old Richard III, as in Rachel Thieves, isn't getting any better at the job, is she?
No, I think some economists were saying it was a surprise decline in the economy, but I don't think, to be honest, it was much of a surprise, Mike, because what we've seen now is 4 months of flatline negative growth, and what does that mean? It really means that with the population going up across the United Kingdom, Mike, that the kind of the share of the economy in relation to our population is actually in decline, and the standard of living for everybody is pretty much in decline. So yeah, we saw this 0.1%. It doesn't sound a lot, but if you want to start getting some growth in the economy, Mike, you need some positive numbers. And what was dragging the economy down in the October figures was the services sector, in particular retail. I think a lot of people kind of subdued. We're seeing kind of those non-essential retail stores where you normally would cut back on spending when you haven't got the money in your pocket. They've been struggling. And I think the British Retail Consortium have said there's been subdued Black Friday deals as well in terms of what's been going on after these set of figures, Mike. So after this full budget, it's only going to make things even worse. So very, very poor set of figures for Rachel.
Right. And there's nothing much that she can really do about it because an awful lot of businesses look forward to Christmas. They look forward to, a boom in the business that they do, whatever it is, whether it's hospitality. But people won't be going out as much over Christmas this year as they were last year because people simply haven't got the money, have they?
No, I saw a few interviews on TV the other day with a few people in the hospitality sector, and they say their bookings are down. People aren't going out as much. That festive cheer just isn't there. And you say there's not a lot that she can do about it. Well, she's done a lot to cause this problem, Mike. This isn't just some miraculous issue that's coming into the United Kingdom. We've talked about it before. That jobs tax has had a significant impact on hospitality. The national minimum wage increase has had a significant impact as well. So that's what's going on here, Mike, is that we're basically Reeves's policy. So she can do something. She could cut taxes, but what she's done is increase them even more. That's not even in the kind of the figures that we've got at the moment because this is before the budget. It's going to take a bit of time before those tax rises come in. So she could do something about it, but she obviously doesn't want to do it, Mike.
Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, in your Substack this week, you've written about this, saying this is not just an isolated incident anymore. It's not just a bad month. It's not just, people trying to save up for Christmas and not spending money in October. You're calling it structural paralysis.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, she keeps blaming, when she goes on telly, she'll talk about the black hole that they inherited from the Tory government. That's nothing in terms of what she's claiming. Was it the 22 billion black hole she says were there? The borrowing figures that she's had since has been way, way over that. She can't then keep blaming Liz Truss's mini budget. That had a little bit of a spike in terms of the markets, but they've got to come a point, Mike, where they accept that they've been in power now for way, way over a year. And the decisions that they're doing are having a massive impact. That's what's really the problem here, Mike. So the structural issues are all caused by the Labour government. We could go down a different road, Mike, but they're just putting the foot on the accelerator, choking growth. And what we've got, Mike, is basically we've got a shrinking private sector. What that then means is we've got fewer jobs. Fewer jobs means more taxpayers' money goes on benefits. And because we haven't got the money in the exchequer, we borrow more. And then we just go round in this loop all the time, Mike. And it's not great.
And I guess the problem for you in Wales is that, if anything, it's probably worse there than it is in England, because I was reading at the weekend that the Senedd has come out with its latest kind of ruse to try and kickstart the economy. They've decided to ban wet wipes. I don't know why. Apparently they're the first part of Britain to ban wet wipes. And I thought to myself, well, what a load of wet wipes. I mean, what are they thinking?
Well, was it the actual stuff that you would use, or the names of some of the politicians in the Senate that they're going to ban there, Mike? That's the important thing. Well, there could be a few wet wipes down there.
It just seems bizarre, doesn't it? Because we've got, I don't know whether you're going to be affected by the doctors' strike, but this morning, obviously, the BMA apparently is going to have a meeting and they're going to decide whether or not they're actually going to go out on strike, which is meant to happen basically, I think on the 17th, which would be Wednesday. And then they would kick that through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the way through to the 22nd, 23rd. And then suddenly and then it's Christmas. And of course, because we're in the midst of this, flu epidemic, as we're being told, the flu, super flu, they're being told by Wes Streeting. In fact, Wes Streeting was doing some interviews back end of last week, basically saying he can't guarantee the safety of people in hospital. He can't guarantee that people won't die.
Yeah, well, these doctor strikes, Mike, it will lead to kind of deaths. It shouldn't affect me down in Wales because obviously the health's devolved, and this is an England only strike that they're talking about. But all of the number of days they're talking about is just obscene as well. And we've got to hark back to they're talking about going on strike because they keep saying, and you've talked about this in the past, Mike. We've got to keep reminding people. They keep saying they want their pay put back to, I think, 2009 levels before the Tory government came in with austerity. But how many of these junior doctors are going to go on strike have been employed since 2009? So they haven't lost all of this money. They knew what they were asking for. They knew what the pay was when they came in, and people will die, Mike. The NHS, it always is busy at winter time, and the big problem for me with the NHS, Mike, is not the flu that's kind of hitting the NHS at the moment. It's the fact that we have not been building the hospitals and put the beds in to cope with the demand that will be pushed onto the NHS through two things: populations going up and the number of older people in the population. So I think I don't always agree with Wes Streeting on a lot of stuff, but I do agree with them on this one, Mike. These strikes, they're irresponsible, they're unnecessary. The BMA militant union, they should scrap this strike. They should be doing that. Will they do that? Let's hope there's some common sense, Mike, because this will lead to some sad deaths.
Well, it will. And the point is, at the end of the day, it's Wes Streeting's fault, really, because he gave them money as soon as they got in. It was the first thing he did, practically, was to hand the doctors sort of 30% pay rise, effectively. And now, look what's happened. They've come back for more. He didn't actually solve the problem, and they're still unhappy. They're always going to be unhappy.
Yeah, and if you give 30%, and if he caves in again, what are they going to do? They're going to come back for even more. The big problem the government has on this one, Mike, is that if they give a big pay deal to the resident doctors, junior doctors, whatever they want to call themselves next week, if he gives a big pay deal, then every part of the public sector will just say, let's go on strike because Wes Streeting and all going to dip into their pocket. And we haven't got the money to pay them, Mike, because of basically all this borrowing with the economy's not growing. If the economy was growing, we might have a little bit more money to spend around, Mike, but we haven't because this Labour government is absolutely shot the economy, shot the NHS. And I'm fed up of them blaming the previous, the Tory party, Mike, they didn't do a great job. That's partly why I don't think the Labour Party were voted in. The Tory party were voted out. But they've got to take some accountability and ownership, the Labour Party themselves. And this doctor strike might got to be scrapped. If they want to have a strike, have one in January. Let's get this. We don't want to be having this in the next week or so.
No, I know. I mean, she's going to be. I suppose the only thing that we can look forward to is that Rachel Reeves is going to have a miserable Christmas because she's going to be sitting there wondering how much longer she's got the job for because she surely can't last too long into the new year. It's absolutely ridiculous, craziness, absolute craziness. But let's talk a bit about the flu epidemic and the flu crisis, as you would call it. We keep getting told that more and more hospitals are admitting more and more people, but they keep telling people that they should go to hospital if they've got flu. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? So people are going to hospital because they're being told this is a very dangerous and virulent form of flu. The actual figures, the actual numbers, when you think of the number of hospitals that we've got, don't suggest there's a crisis to me at all, does it?
No. So what's happened this year, and if you track the flu virus, so we have some health monitoring across the country, it's kind of started a little bit earlier than what we've seen in previous years. So we hear some comparisons then comparing how many people are in hospital with the flu this week, say, compared to the same week a year earlier. Because it's coming a little bit earlier, but there's no evidence to suggest, it's going to be for a very, very long time. People are saying, the numbers in hospital are significantly higher than this time last year. But then when you track those numbers, Mike, they're nowhere near the peak that we've seen in recent years. And we go back, you can go back 10, 20, 30 years. Flu was huge issues with flu back in the day when I was young as well. So the actual numbers that we're seeing, this isn't a massive spike that we're seeing at the moment, but it's been so. It reminds me of 2020, Mike, again, when we were talking with the COVID virus, where you start seeing the number of patients in hospital kind of with COVID starts going up, and it's all over the media. It's all doom and gloom. Right. But you're right. If you know well, you go to hospital. So it's not surprising that people are in hospital ill, because what are they? Hospitals are there for ill patients.
Well, this is the thing, and I was asking this question last week. How is it possible that if you've got a building that looks after sick people, it suddenly becomes under stress because you put more sick people in it, and the sick people who are already there can't have their operations because there's some more sick people coming in the door? This makes no sense at all. But of course, as you might expect, Jamie, a bit like 2020, certain aspects of the media and certain places inside Parliament have got all these bozos talking about putting masks on. and taking precautions and, not going out and, social distancing and all that sort of cobblers, right? And Kate Garraway on Good Morning Britain just last week actually said, should we not be getting kids to put masks on in schools? Check this out. I can scarcely believe my ears when I heard that.
No, Mike, so I've done a piece on my kind of Substack, statsjamie.co.uk on this morning, because we've got to call this out, because if you remember what was going on in 2020 and 2021, Mike, you'd have those daily press conferences. And how many times did you see like Laura Kuenssberg and Robert Peston? They'd stand there and the government would make some big announcements and they would always be calling, don't you think we need some more lockdown? Don't you think we should go in a bit harder? And this is for exactly the same playbook. So the schools minister's on there now with Kate Garraway to talk about some stuff. And she's literally, as you say, are you considering face masks? And then she gives an answer. Why not have face masks? So the question then begs in terms of, well, what's the facts and the evidence on that? Well, we've got some actually, Mike. So Department for Education did a study on the impact of face masks. They found there was no statistical difference when you were looking at the absence rates of schools that had face masks on and those who didn't. But what they also cited in the same report, Mike, is that pupils said 80% of them said it made communication difficult. Not surprised if you got this mask on you. And 55% of them said it made learning more difficult. So why would you want to make education more difficult for the children by putting masks on? And that clip that you showed there, Mike, it's like they're goading and making the government look weak and bad if they don't put masks on. But you've got to look at what's the facts and the evidence on this, Mike. So, it's right to call this out. It's good that you're calling it out, Mike, because, some common sense we need on this, not let's muzzle all the children in schools again.
You'd think they would have learned, wouldn't you? But who could forget? Do you remember that famous picture of Keir Starmer who's sitting outside on like a picnic table and he had that ridiculous sort of helmet on his head? Do you remember? It was like he had sort of a visor that came down like that. And then some people were wearing visors with a mask on as well. But we'll show you that picture as well, because, that sort of summed everything up. He's sitting outside, right, in the open air, talking to some people who were sitting, 3 feet away from him. And he's got this ridiculous visor on, like some kind of, knight in not so shining armour.
Oh, the best ones as well, Mike, you see, and still today, is where you're driving along and you'll see somebody in the car next to you on their own with a mask on. You think, who are you protecting yourself from? You're literally in the car on your own with a mask on. And
I know.
You can't help, you just genuinely can't help some people. And some other stuff I kind of wrote last week, Mike, as well, when just in terms of, the masks themselves. ONS, where I used to work, they did a study, kind of the COVID infection survey. They looked at basically what was the chance of having a positive COVID test for people who always wore masks and those who never wore masks.
Yeah.
And again, there was no statistical difference between the two. And so when these politicians are being goaded by journalists to do things, we've got to keep coming back to what's the facts and the evidence. Maybe during the pandemic, it was a little bit thin on the ground because we didn't have this thing, but we've got plenty of it now, Mike. Kate Garraway pushing for masks in class. It was awful at the time, Mike. I know you, fair play, you was one of the ones, common sense, calling this out right at the time.
Yeah.
And it's good to be calling it out again, Mike, because that's definitely a road this government does not want to go down. And again, I said earlier on, I don't always agree with Wes Streeting, and I give him a bit of praise here. I'm going to praise the schools minister on this one from the Labour Party as well, Mike. She didn't rise to it and say that's something we'll look at. I think they'll kick that one well into the long grass.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Jamie, good to talk to you. Great to see you. Have a great Christmas if we don't talk to you again. And we'll see you brand new year, brand new shows. It's all going to be happening. 2026 is going to be a belter. So that's the end of the first big show from the brand new home of the Mike Graham Show. We're going to be here doing live shows, of course, all the way through 2026. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We're going to do a live breakfast show 7 to 9 o'clock. Don't forget to go to YouTube, like it, subscribe to it, please, as well. We'll be putting out Plank of the Year from here. We're recording it this week. We're going to be putting it out on Christmas Day evening, so you'll be able to watch that. We've now got ourselves up to about 114,000 subscribers now. We've got nearly 2 million views, so we're really rocking and rolling, and we're really looking forward to it. This is going to be a fantastic place to produce shows from. We're going to be doing lots of other shows as well. We're going to be doing lifestyle shows. We're going to be doing all manner of different things on the Mike Graham channel. We want you to check out the Substack as well, where you can subscribe. You get extra content there every single day, and we'll bring you that more and more into the new year. This, of course, is the Mike Graham Show. It's the real home of common sense. We'll see you tomorrow.